You're listening to Who, What, Why, a podcast about game design with game designers. You can connect with me on Twitter at WhoWhatWhyCast or find me on my email at whowhatwhycast@gmail.com. Welcome to the show.
Hi, this is Catherine Croft. I'm the co-founder of Cat Lily Games. We make fun STEM-themed games for children of all ages. You're listening to Who, What, Why, and can learn more about me at catlily.com.
Welcome to the Who, What, Why podcast, featuring designers, publishers, and more. I'm your host, Mike, and on the show with me today is Dr. Catherine Croft. We're not too formal here. We'll call her Catherine after that.
Yes, that's true.
The co-founder of Cat Lily Games. Catherine, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
All right. Well, I'm glad you agreed to come on. You're I want to say the second or third game person who's a gaming person who's in academia in some way who's been on the show.
Oh, great.
Which is good. I myself am a teacher, so I like academics. We're fun people, I think.
Yes, we are very fun and creative.
That's right. We're always like kids. I swear, this is fun. Just write this paper. It'll be super fun. But that's not what we're talking about.
No.
So what is Cat Lily Games? Just for people who don't know too much about it.
Yes. So I co-founded it along with John Nardalili in 2015. We were both teachers, and we both discovered that we loved using tabletop games in our classes. And it really was the most effective way of teaching, as well as being the most fun way of interacting for the kids among themselves and then with us as well. So he was formerly an engineer, a civil engineer, and I'm formerly a neurobiologist, and so come from that STEM background. And it evolved basically because I discovered one day that he had designed his own game, and I had never met anyone that had designed
What
their
did
own
he
game.
What did he design?
It isn't published, so that's kind of another long story. But
Okay.
He had the prototype when he brought it in, and I was very much impressed. I really I've always loved board games and been obsessed with them, but I never knew anyone that had actually designed one. And he brought it in, and we played it with the kids, and I played it, and it was amazing. And so basically, I convinced him to go to this game designer night in downtown Washington, D.C. At the National Academy. Yes, the National Academies of Sciences had a museum. They still do, but they've changed formats with it.
Okay.
And it's called the Koshland Science Museum. And so they had this open night for local game designers to come and have a table with their game and play with the public in Washington, D.C. So I was like, John, you have to go. And at first he didn't really want to, because it's really hard to show off your game to the public. And
of course.
But I'm much more outgoing with the general public. And so I, long story short, convinced him to go. And I said, I'll talk for you. I'll, be the promoter of your game. All you have to do is just explain it to people, and I'll do that. So we went, and it was just the smash hit. It was the most popular table by far. And it was just really overwhelming, the response. And it was so successful, actually, they asked him to come back for his own special night just for him.
Ooh.
So I was like, wow, this is really, we're onto something here. And so we did that. And then I had been designing a game for one of my classes, and John noticed I was designing it. And so he said, hey, you want any help? So we kind of co-designed this game together. And it was the first game that we co-designed that later became the foundation for Cat Lily. So it's called Cycles. and it's all about life cycles, and it's
Okay.
basically a fast-paced strategy card game where you're collecting sets of life cycles, but you're also stealing them, and they have special powers based on whatever they are. Like if you're building like the plant cycle, you get the power of harvest, you can draw an extra card, like that kind of thing.
Okay.
So that was our first game. And then I happened to quit that. We were teaching together at like this after school science center. So I quit that job. And then it was kind of sad because we had all this momentum going, and the Koshland asked me to bring cycles. And so we were like, okay, well, how do we keep this going if we're not working together? So John asked me to, hey, do you want to form a company? So I was like, yeah, I do. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how it was born. And it always had the mission of being STEM based. Like we
Okay.
were not going to make games that were just for fun. We're very much into making fun, silly games that appeal to kids, but it has to have some kind of learning message that's STEM based. So I basically had a year where I wasn't working. So I dedicated myself fully to like building up Cat Lily as a company, just the two of us at that time. And I was lucky enough so I'm based in Warrenton, Virginia, which is like an hour outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
And I'm very close to George Mason University. And it turns out George Mason has a game design institute. So they have a game design major for computer games. But they have associated with that, it's called the Virginia Serious Games Institute. And basically, it's like a business incubator for anyone from George Mason who wants to take what they've learned from the game design program and then launch their own game.
Okay.
And at the time, it was like this very like coincidence, very fortunate that all this happened around the same time that I was starting Cat Lily, is that they opened up to outside people, because I didn't go to George Mason, but they were opening it up to outside companies. And so far they were only digital games, and I was a board game company. So someone suggested that I go and apply, and I was like, that's crazy. I don't make video games. Like, you're never going to take me. But I applied and I interviewed, and it went really well. So I was accepted for residency, and so I had my own office space there, and it was fantastic. Like, I can't say enough nice things. Like, I was part of this pod full of gamers, and
That's cool.
it was just amazing. And I would get all this like free mentorship on how to run a business. And there was like a conference room where, even the digital companies, they have to, well, they don't have to, but they usually make some kind of paper prototype design
Mm-hmm.
that they can like manipulate as a group to figure out kind of, what they want from the game. And so, like, I would just walk through the office space, and there's a whole game spread out on the conference table, like looking like cones of Dunshire. Like,
Okay.
this is like the coolest place in the world. So I did that for a year, really learning how to run a business and launching Cat Lily. And if I hadn't done that, it probably wouldn't still be around today, honestly. And then I realized after a year of doing that full time that I needed to make money. So
So you're like, the game world, not this, the educational game world, especially.
yeah,
Not the like cash cow that everybody pretends it is.
no, board games are definitely not a cash cow. Like video games, yes. Board games, no. So I was like, okay. So I I found a teaching job full time at a public high school here in Warrenton.
Okay.
And so you're a teacher, like teaching takes up a
A
huge amount of
ton
time.
of your time. Oh yeah.
So basically my system was to do a whole bunch of Cat Lily stuff over the summer. Just like, dedicate myself fully to it and set it up so that I could kind of run itself over the course of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just do like light maintenance and like, emails and follow-ups and things like that. And then my summers were game design, and then I kind of flip back and forth like that. And so that's kind of how it's been. But the interesting part of also being in that incubator is that so the game design majors at George Mason, they have to do an internship to graduate.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so it's a 1 semester long internship. And I started to get applications for interns, and at first I'm like, what is this? Like, it's just
Interns at Cat Lily?
I know. Like, it's just me and John. Like, we're a board game company.
It's like,
Like,
what
I
do
don't
they
understand.
even...
Yeah, so but like they really like they were like the first person I had was very persistent. And I was like, I can't pay you. You know, I don't know. I was like, I'll be very honest with you. Like, and he was like, no, I just want to learn how to make a game. And like, so to all the interns I've gotten, because I've gotten a lot since then, they're either focused on art or on programming. And interestingly
Okay.
enough, they're light on the game theory in the program, which I find interesting.
So
They
the program itself, like the program they come out of,
yeah,
doesn't talk a lot about game theory?
they have their intro courses, right? But it's like they're like intro and that's it. And then it's like here's how to program and make a video game, here's how to do art and all of that. But I feel like there's not a whole lot of game mechanics. Like here's all the different
Okay.
types of game mechanics. And here's all the things you can do.
I mean,
And
here's things about statistics that you maybe want
yes,
to get to learn, get familiar with, and
yeah,
player psychology and things like that.
exactly. I don't know, and that's maybe I'm completely wrong and it's changed, but the ones that I get they're not really specialists in that.
Interesting.
And I've had, oh gosh, probably 10 different interns at this point.
Holy moly.
Yeah, yeah. And so the nice part is I started to get one, and then like they don't always like usually it's a semester and then they move on to something else.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to get ones that didn't want to leave, which so they would graduate, which is fine. Like so they would graduate and still want to work for me for free. Which I'm not going to say no to. Like it became this really nice thing, and I kept on saying like I'm kind of in disbelief that how special these people are, because I would tell them I can't pay you. I'm just going to be honest, like I can't pay you. You should really find something else to do. And
find something that makes you money. Don't just work for free.
Exactly. So they do all have day jobs. So I have, oh my gosh, right now it's so funny. I have, hold on, six that have graduated and still stayed with me. And I think so they have day jobs, but they told me that I pay them in fun.
What, what do you like? I guess what do they do for you? That
they
would
do art, like all the art for our board games. They're incredible artists.
Okay.
And they also so the way it usually works up until like this year is that I would come with a design. Or back when John was with the company. So John, when he was with me, was very prolific.
Okay.
And he would usually be the main designer, and then I'd bring the design and we would play test it and develop it and try and break the game and make it better and all of that.
Sure.
As a group. So they're like a really great play testing game development group. And then they would do the art. And that was the primary role. And then John left, and then it was mostly me bringing ideas, and they would develop my games. And then this year, they've been bringing game design ideas to me, which I love. So now they're kind of like taking on more of a designer role, and then we all develop their games together as well.
Oh, that's neat.
It's like, yeah, it's like a fun little engine, and we meet once a week, and we've done that even during the pandemic, virtually. But it really is like, as a teacher, like you get so tired during the week, and it's really hard to force myself to go to the weekly meetings sometimes, even though I love them. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. But every time I go, it's like it energizes me and inspires me, and like I just love our conversations and the thoughts and like the creativity. Like it's so rejuvenating. And so every time I leave, I'm like so pumped. I can't even sleep because I'm so excited. So it's just such a joy in my life. And we have all of our games are STEM themed, and we have a line of about 9 or 10 games. And so what happens for the past, gosh, so my business model had changed. So initially I was thinking when I was in the first couple of years that I would get investors and then, self-manufacture and all this stuff. But I
Sure.
quickly realized that's not my expertise. Like, I'm a neurobiologist and a teacher. Like, I'm not a business person really. And I
And
don't,
doing
yeah,
logistics is so, I mean, like getting quotes
yeah,
and like and dealing with freight and
I don't
dealing
want
with
to,
like distribution and getting like distribution partners or
yeah,
like warehousing your games, even if it's like in your garage, you still have to be like, where am I going to put all these games?
yeah. It's
I
like
did
a
a print run
whole,
of 1,500, and I now have 75 boxes of games in my house. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know if that's the real number, but I do know that like, games come in like it's like 6 games to a case. Like,
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean, it's a whole nother world that I don't really want to dip too far into, and because that's not the fun part to be,
hmm
um, which I know, like, we have to do things that aren't fun all the time, but like, it's just not. I want to focus on teaching and being creative, so I changed it around, and I've been pitching to big companies for the past 3 years or so,
okay,
um, and so I've gotten really close, like some heartbreakingly close things. So, um, so Asmodee once told me they wanted our entire line, and then
interesting.
that didn't happen. And then
Thanks,
Hasbro actually
Asmodee.
wanted, yeah, I pitched to Hasbro at one of these Women in Toys events, and they actually wanted one of our games, and it was going like to the next level, and then it didn't happen. And then there's been several companies like that, where I get so many yeses to begin with, and then it falls through. So it's really really hard to keep going. I mean, I'm never gonna stop. I love what I do and I love pitching. And like the latest thing,
Sure.
like our latest game is under review at Haba, and actually another one that I designed. It was featured at the Smithsonian at like an exhibit there, and
Interesting.
so Ravensburger is actually reviewing that one for perhaps publication, but like again, like I'm just waiting. I'm always waiting. So
I,
I mean, the biggest thing I've learned from this is just resilience, because I think it's a matter of timing, because it's not like I get a lot of people saying, "Oh, I hate your games. Your games are terrible."
do,
But people like them.
do you get to the contract phase? Like, do you get, or you never,
No. I
or
get
not
verbal
really?
yeses. And then like, hey, let's follow up and have some follow-up meetings, and then that just kind of peters out and I don't
I,
hear from them.
I feel like that's so. Publishers are always looking like they want to pull things in. It's because they also have like, okay, this will be for our 2024 line. Like, so
Mhm.
they're thinking like 3 whatever, 4 years in advance. And I bet sometimes that the market shifts and they go,
Yeah.
no, maybe we're not going to do that. Or even if the market doesn't shift, they get interested in something else. Like, and not in like an insulting way, not in a way that's like, we don't like Cat Lily's games. It's just more like, yeah, I wonder. I mean, and to be fair, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
literally I'm speculating. That's all I can do.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a whole number of things. And I get so heartbreakingly close, like I said, and like, every time it falls through, I get really sad. But I keep going. I'm never gonna give up. I love
No,
what I do, and I don't. If I was getting all this negative feedback, I'd be like, wow, I should really do something else. But you
absolutely.
don't.
You
And go ahead.
I was saying the beginning of before we started talking, you talked about how you like to create mission based games.
Yes.
And what I wanted to ask was, how do mission based games differ from, well, I guess it's non mission based games? Like,
Um.
what makes a game for you, like for Cat Lily, what makes a game something you want to put energy into developing or designing and developing that is mission based versus like something not?
Yes. So our games have to convey in like a sneaky manner. some kind of STEM concept, so science, technology, engineering, or math. Math is not so overt in our line because there's so many math games. Like games are inherently, based on math.
Even fun games are based on math. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to say that, actually. I just realized. Even games that are like hobby games that are not aimed at like education are.
Yes, exactly. Like,
You come on to talk about your games, and then the podcast host insults you. Well, fun games are better. They have math.
no, I know what you mean though. Like it's if I was a math teacher, which John actually is now, but you can take more mainstream games and teach math with them. So ours have some kind of science concept that you could teach as a teacher. So I'm a neurobiologist, and most of the games I design are based in the life sciences. And so they're fun that you could play with your family or your friends and not be like, oh, I'm playing an educational game. Like, not like that. But I can also take that same game and go into my high school classroom and use it as a lesson if I frame it correctly. So, like, the concepts are there and the mechanics are based on the science concept. But it's like, it depends how you want to use the game. And so for instance, one time at one of our weekly meetings for Cat Lily, we were brainstorming game ideas, and we had this fabulous idea actually for this like taco truck game, like building tacos.
Okay.
And then I was like, hold on.
You're like, wait
a minute.
What's the scientific benefit of tacos?
Exactly. And then like we were trying to convince ourselves, well, we could put like the nutritional value. Like, no one wants to read about nutritional
The pyramid food groups. The food group pyramid. Oh.
Like, yeah, so like I love board games of all kinds. I'm not gonna make a game unless it fits our mission of STEM outreach. Because that's my passion in life. That's my goal in life. I'm all consumed by bringing science to the public.
So, what is it? So you just mentioned the taco truck game or the taco truck idea, and then you were like, "How do we connect this?" So, what does it take to take a scientific concept from something that kids might read in a book and turn it into a game? Like, what do you like? What concepts do you gravitate towards versus concepts that you shy away from or anything like that? Like, how do you go from concept to game?
It traditionally comes because I'm a teacher and John was as well. Like, it comes from the teaching angle. Like, what is difficult for me to teach and what is boring for me to teach? And how can I make that more fun? And so we're coming from like the standards that have to get across in the classroom from the curriculum.
Okay.
And this is why, all of our games are actually very different from each other. And it's all because it's based on the concept. Like, what is most suitable for this particular concept? So like cycles, for instance, is all about, because I had to teach kids different stages of life cycles. And like the first one I had to teach was the mushroom life cycle, which, who cares? I mean, like little kids don't care.
Let's be honest. Nobody cares about mushrooms.
I mean, like 8-year-olds do not care. And so it's fascinating and it's beautiful, but it's just like, how do you get them excited about learning that? And so that's where that came from. There's all different life cycles in there. And when I teach with it, I can use it to compare them and contrast them and all these things. But other ones, like we have a programming game called Tacto, where it's very short and sweet, where you're programming tic-tac-toe to beat your opponent.
Okay.
It's very simple, but it's like very addictive, and it teaches elementary kids and older actually, but like elementary kids will learn logic, and like they don't know the terms algorithm and if then and all that, but like we've actually done some testing where we gave them like a pre-test and a logic, like just logic questions about sequences. And then they played the game for a while, and then they took like a post test, and they did do better. Like, it actually helped them think more logically. And we're not over like, this is a coding game and you are going to code. Like, it's not like that, but like they learn kind of the way of thinking like a coder. And
That's interesting. I'm looking at the picture of it on your website, and you won an award for it too.
yeah, we actually won a lot of awards.
For
Yeah,
Serious Play. I've heard of Serious Play.
yeah, from Serious Play and from Imagination Gaming. And like I said, the Smithsonian picked one of our games for their like exhibit downtown. And our most popular game, which is our simplest game, is called Crazy Cats. Which
Because
is
everyone loves cats.
well, the funniest thing is, so my name is Catherine, and that's where the cat comes from, and Cat Lily, and the Lily comes from John's last name. But I hate cats. I'm allergic to them. I hate them. And our logo is a cat.
You do know I have to put this out on the internet, right? But you're digging your own grave on that one.
Well, I'm always scared that I'm going to get like cat presents from people because there's a cat logo. My name is Catherine. Like, and I'm like, oh God, I'm so allergic, and I really don't like them. But so Crazy Cats came from like we wanted an animal, and we were thinking strategically, right? So our name is Cat Lily, so it should be a cat. So then it was Crazy Cats. And it's a genetics game, but you can play with as young as preschool, which I've learned over the years.
Nice.
Because actually, I learned that because when we were designing it, my daughter was 4 at the time, and she started playing it with us, and I was like, "What is happening right here?" And so, like, she loved it. And so, even though she didn't really understand all the genetics concepts in it, she gradually learned them. And I remember a couple of years later, I was at some kind of a game event. We were like showing, like demoing our games for something at some kind of expo. And she started explaining to people what dominant and recessive meant. And she was like 7. And I was like, what? Like, I was just so happy.
That's awesome. How did you so for that game, so let's say Crazy Cats. Mm-hmm. What did you when you designed it and when you play it, especially with like students, do you preface it with information about genetic about DNA and things like that? Like, do you let them play and then talk about things like DNA and things?
It's funny you say that. It depends who I'm playing with, and the way I've pitched Crazy Cats has changed dramatically over time. So I used to pitch it as a STEM game, and I used to have that vocabulary like dominant, recessive in the pitch, and there's like no strategy in this game. It's just a really fun, silly game.
Sure.
Basically, the dice are the cat's parents. You roll the dice, and you see what kind of traits your baby cat inherits, and then you draw it.
Oh, okay.
And if you roll at least one dominant, which is like an even number, mm-hmm. you are stuck drawing whatever the game tells you to. Like if it's for the body, you're stuck drawing oval. If you manage to roll 2 odd numbers, which represent recessive, then you get to draw whatever you want and you get a point. So basically, like, you get points for like crazy looking cats. And so kids get really creative and they'll draw like, hexagon shaped bodies or rainbow or cloud or heart or whatever. And you get these really crazy looking cats. And it's just like a really silly, funny game. But they do learn, like, you get half your DNA from your mom, half from your dad. Like, they don't blend together and, in standard Mendelian, like, of course there's exceptions, but I don't even get into that because like we're just teaching the basics. So
sure.
Like dominant always wins and all this stuff. And so there's a lot of meat to it if you wanted to go that far, but most people just want to draw silly cats and roll dice. So and there's like a superpower bonus round at the end, and you get to draw superpowers and stuff.
Okay.
But so I used to pitch it with the sciencey vocabulary, and I would instantly get a no from like any major company.
They would all look and be like, we don't want science.
Yeah. And then I was like, okay. So then I took a break from pitching it for a while, and then I went back to pitching it because it really is like our most popular game with people. Mm-hmm. And I took out all the sciencey stuff when I just said odds and evens, and all of a sudden everybody loved it. Like I was like, you've got it. It's the exact same game. And it was really funny. And so I was it was like some speed pitch event with a lot of different companies, and it was like 13 different companies I pitched to, and I think 6 of them liked Crazy Cats that night. I'm like, this
That
is you know?
that's so interesting how you changed the framing just a little bit, and all
Yeah.
of a sudden people went, this is such a fun game. Meanwhile, you're like, but it's also about dominant and regressive.
I know. So like
Um,
that's why I'm like
Gee,
so torn into it, because it's like it is a fun, silly game, but I can't be overt in the educational part. And on the other hand, I use that game in my high school classroom when we get to the genetics part, like as an intro to
right,
like
right,
basic Mendelian inheritance. And so in that case, I do frame it science, science, science all the way. And
right.
I can hammer that home. And so it just depends what audience I'm talking to.
Do-
Yeah.
I wonder if like, I wonder if like, I kind of wonder why people would be. I guess a lot of people assume games are like a way to escape learning. It's
Yes.
like, whoa, 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 we're playing games here. We're not learning. We're not learning. We're playing games.
Yeah.
Right? And so like I wonder if like why people are so resistant to a game that a game that's like, look, this is about teaching
Yeah.
this is about teaching about traits and about DNA and how regressive and dominant traits work.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder why it's so
It is.
they're so resistant.
I think they're thinking of how to market it, but I think they're short sighted because, STEM toys are a huge trend right now. You'd think that,
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. And I think it also suffers from the fact that traditionally, like, especially like in the 90s when I was in high school, like the educational games they would throw at you were not fun.
They were terrible. They were all terrible.
They were awful. And so I think people have this notion like, oh God, this is going to be a terrible game.
They were always trivia. They were almost
Yes.
always trivia based. And it
Yeah.
was basically like, did you already learn this information before you got to the game? Now
Yeah.
you can play it.
Yeah. And then it's not even replayable because it's just trivia. And it's just,
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of trivia games. I never want to make a trivia game. Because it's not even really learning, it's memorizing stuff anyway. So like I want you to like internalize the concept of what's going on.
Do
And
you provide resources that go along with all of your games? Like, do you provide like, I don't know, let's say worksheets or something, or any kind of educational resources
um,
for each of your games, or no?
I don't right now. I put a lot of teacher resources on my website actually, just about because I give a lot of professional development from my district, and also like at Gen Con and things like that. Like I've given talks on how to use board
Oh,
games in the
with
classroom.
Kathleen Mercury. I've had Kathleen Mercury on my show.
Yes. Yeah, so we've done a couple of those together on like how do you use them in your
Okay,
classroom. And so I have handouts and things on my website under teacher resources that might help people. But
nice.
the way I sell my games right now is just like print on demand from Game Crafter. So like if you go to my website and you're like, oh, I want Crazy Cats, then like I would then order it from Game Crafter and have it sent to you. So it's
Gotcha.
not like I have a whole bunch of Crazy Cats here in my house. I started
That
out doing that.
that's a good thing because you already indicated that you're allergic. Oh, you meant the game. Sorry, you meant the game. I have all these crazy cats in my house. They're board games, I swear.
Well, it's funny because I have a potbelly pig, so I'm like, I should have made a pig game. That's what should have happened.
That's another one. Well, I don't know what. I don't know. I don't know what scientific concepts go around a pig. Maybe the digestive system.
Yeah, I
Uh,
have to make a way to make a pig game because it's just not fair to him. So
um, you earlier in the show, before the show started, you talked to me about how one of your missions for Cat Lily Games was to help explain to kids mostly, and to the public and to people, right?
yes,
What it is that scientists do, and like who scientists are, and why scientists are important. And so, what I want to know is why is it important to teach people what scientists do? Why is that important work?
I think there's a lot of misinformation, and it's really easy to mislead the public if they don't have a solid science background. And that's frightening to me. And like, I've thought this, I mean, I've realized this for a long time. It's become exacerbated in the past few years with COVID, for sure.
Oh my gosh, we've lived through the extreme of a year of people who we are like, you really need to learn some science, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's frightening. And so that all started because when I was in high school, I hated science, which is baffling when I really think about it, because my dad was a scientist. He was
Hmm.
a biologist, and I did well in science. I hated it. And it was because it was like all worksheets and memorization, and I was like, what, this is so boring. What is this? And so then when I went to college, I loved history, and I was going to be a history major, and I don't know what I was going to do with it, but like I just loved history. But I happened to explore different areas, and I got to tour these different labs. I went to Duke University, and so they let you do all these different programs to figure out what you wanted to do. And there was a week-long thing where you got to tour labs, and they were pretty cool. But when I got to the brain lab, it was just the most amazing day of my life. Like, I had no idea. Like, I saw people slicing up brains and dyeing them and looking them under the microscope, and they were like a little family, and they were all like solving these mysteries together. And I'm like, this is the coolest job anyone's ever had. Like, how come I was never shown or explained this? Like, I had no idea that's what it's like to be a scientist.
Okay.
And then I was like, maybe I want to be like, this is what I want to do. And so I just took more classes like in biology and chemistry and psychology and like basic neuroscience classes. And I just absolutely loved it. And the more I learned, the more I loved it. And then I started doing research. And then I knew I wanted to go to graduate school. So then I went to the University of Virginia and got my PhD in neuroscience. And then I was a scientist for 8 years after that. So like, I love neuroscience. I love research. Like, I absolutely adore it. And I feel like I accidentally became a scientist because of that 1 week at Duke.
Okay.
And I'm like shocked that I would have missed this whole profession just based on the way science was taught to me in high school. And now that I'm back to being a teacher, I see it's still taught the same way, which is terrifying. It's still like education is still stuck in that like worksheet mode.
Yeah.
And so I'm a very passionate person. And in
Mm-hmm.
my high school, I'm very vocal in my advocacy for hands-on learning and applying it to the real world. So everything that I teach in high school is applied. So
Okay.
take something from the news and say, okay, let's try to understand this. Then we go back to the basics in like biology or whatever class I'm teaching to explain that phenomenon.
Okay.
And like there's basic things like DNA fingerprinting. I mean, that is almost ancient technology at this point. And these kids don't have any idea. They've never ran like a gel through the electrophoresis to separate the band. They don't have any clue. And this is standard. Like, it's really embarrassingly old. So if you get to graduate school and you don't know how to pipette things, that's really bad. Like, and I feel like education needs to catch up. We need to teach these concepts like these genetics and like DNA technology younger so that we can then, progress to more advanced topics like nanotechnology and the CRISPR gene editing and all of this stuff. Like, it's hard to get to all of those topics if you have to go back to, crazy cats type Mendelian genetics and then work
Right.
your way up there. Like, I feel like my high schoolers should already have that down by the time they get to me, but they don't. And it's really frightening. And so I really want the high schoolers I teach to know, to understand the news, like what's happening, what does that mean? Like if I hear that there's an mRNA vaccine, what does that mean? Why are people scared of that? Like, what's going on? And so we talk a lot about
Does
that.
it give you superpowers? How long do those superpowers last?
Exactly. Exactly. So I start the day, every class, with something from the news, like a little tidbit.
Okay.
We talk very much about like, why are we learning? Because, kids are always like, why are we learning this?
What am I going to do with this? When am I ever going to need this?
Exactly. So I was like, okay, this is why, because you're going to be a citizen of the world and you're going to have to vote on these issues. And I want you to be informed about them when you do that. And
That's a great point.
And I also realized before I became a teacher, when I was a scientist, so I worked at the NIH for 5 years.
Okay.
And doing like molecular biology, cellular biology on synapse development, like how synapses form in the brain. And then I did 3 years at a nonprofit autism lab, which was bioinformatics based. So it was all about analyzing networks of autism genes and discovering patterns and predicting new ones. And so a lot of my research is autism focused.
Okay.
And when I had friends in my lab and things, but like a lot of my closest friends were not scientists. Like they're lawyers and other like public policy people. Like they were not in my sciencey world. And they would ask me, I mean, not to be rude, but like they would ask me like really basic stuff that I was like, I can't believe my highly educated non-science friends don't know this. And it was just like, I remember
anti-vax sort of stuff.
There's that. That was on that drives me crazy. But there was another question about like cloning. And that like I remember something like if when something or an organism is cloned, does it come out as a baby or does it come out as like an adult? And like it was that I was like, what do you mean? The sheep isn't popping out an adult sheep. It's like, those are questions I get a lot from.
Just a facsimile just shows up next to you. What is it? Calvin had a machine like that, but it was a box turned on its side.
That's
actually
right.
I think it might have been vertical. They might have been jumping out the top. I don't remember.
I remember that one. But I get questions like that, and like there was another one. What was it? Oh my gosh.
Nope, they were coming out sideways. I think the transmogrifier was on the other side.
Oh, somebody else was saying how we were talking about some criminal case in the news, and that I think there was like urine found at the scene, and they're like, well, they're never gonna find DNA because DNA is not urine. I was like, what are you talking about?
Where do you think the urine comes from? It comes from inside the body.
And it's just little questions like that I get all the time from my very intelligent, highly educated friends. So I'm like, what is going on? That people just don't understand basic science things.
It's like a lack of practical. They don't.
Yes.
That makes sense. The kids even don't have that practical knowledge.
Yes. And that's my passion. Because I told you, like, I loved research. I loved being a scientist. But for me, I walked away from it essentially so I could have a better quality of life and see my children. I never saw my children.
Oh, yeah.
That's basically why I left, is just to have better quality of life with my family. But
teaching is good. I mean, it's a good calling to go and teach and to pass that passion on to young students who can take the reins with it.
Yeah, no, I actually think it's meant to be. Like, this is actually the toughest job I've ever had, being a teacher. But it's also the most rewarding. I mean, it doesn't pay anything. Like, teachers don't get paid anything. But, like...
Not as much as a lot of others. For me, it's a long game. Because I'm like, the long game benefits of teaching is better than the short game gains of corporate work.
Exactly. Like, I'm impacting... I get 75 students per semester. So I'm impacting 150 students per year. And like that, that's priceless to me.
Yeah. I actually, this year I felt, my course is always, I teach English, but my course has always got some hands-on elements anyway. But like, I think it's also like the hands-on is so important. And one of the things that I despised about remote teaching when I was doing it was just so much harder to do hands-on.
Yeah.
Like I had one of my most successful projects this year was the kids I had them write. We read a bunch of poems, and for each poem style, they wrote they had to do a free write where they had to do their own, and I would give them very loose instructions. Like sometimes the instructions were like, be inspired and also make sure to use 2 metaphors. And sometimes it was like, here are some things you could be inspired by. Like they were super duper loose, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of it all, I said, you're going to make a poetry manuscript. I was like, you're going to do some revision and you're going to make a poetry manuscript and you're going to present it. And they did.
Wow.
And
That's
it was
great.
one of the more fun projects that they had, that they felt. They like indicated, they said, I really like this. They were like, I like that you gave us a lot of freedom. I like that you gave us, you didn't hold our hand through it. You were like, and they also kind of like the fact that like during the whole unit, I was like, okay, here's free write number 1, here's free write number 2, blah, blah, blah. And then we got down to it. And I was like, now pick 5 of the poems you've already written. And for some students, it was like, I didn't write them. I'm like, well, you just gave yourself more work. Yeah. But for a lot of students, they were like, I love the fact that the work was already done. I was just then doing revision.
Aww.
So like they didn't have to go and like, okay, now I have to write 5 poems. Oh my gosh. And some students did. Some students wrote 5. Some students wrote brand new poems because they didn't like what they wrote, so they rewrote.
Aww.
I had one student. One student wrote an absolutely beautiful poem about the Asian, about the all of the bigotry aimed at Asian people that happened live, and the project happened to be around the same time. And her poem, and she's half Asian, so she's like half Chinese. So so she wrote a whole like thing, and she's a great writer, absolutely beautiful wordsmith. So so it's really nice to get to hear, and then like she picked this like very personal like thing, and she shared it with everybody, and it was super nice.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like there's creative things you can do, but like you're right, like it's really hard teaching virtually because you can't really do the hands-on stuff, especially in science. Like it's
no
do labs, but it's also you miss the relationships with the kids. It's just like the daily conversations in the class and just like seeing their face, because like our kids weren't required to turn their camera on, so I never saw.
We tried to require it. It didn't always work.
Yeah, and so like it's really hard to like I don't know, to know if you're impacting someone, because I'm used to that like daily feedback where you
don't even know if they're there.
I know, like
you there? Are you at that computer? Did you go make a sandwich? Did you just turn it on and leave? No, I'm with you. You need that face to face.
Yeah, so you can see in their face if they're getting it or not, and it just wasn't there. And I would do a lot of Nearpods and things where you can like quiz them as you're talking to them, like not like for a grade, but like
right.
Question. So like that was my way of making sure they were actually there, because I would tell them like, if you're not answering, I know you're not there. And so
little checks. Did you use Desmos? I think it's mostly math.
Yeah, so I don't do, our school uses Desmos, but we don't do a whole lot of Desmos in my class.
Gotcha.
Because it's biology and anatomy this past year. And I teach AP research as well now, which I love. But
okay.
Yeah, so it's really hard, like you said, with the pandemic, especially because I am a huge advocate of games in the classroom. So I usually have tons of board games that I incorporate into all my lessons.
Mm-hmm.
And then I couldn't do that because they're board games.
You got to touch.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So like I really struggled with that. And we play with different ways to do virtual games with the class. And it was just really frustrating because I couldn't do all the things I normally do. I have to be super creative to work around it.
What are your favorite, or what are the best published games that you like to play in your classroom versus, and I just mean versus your games, the ones that Cat Lily makes. Ones that maybe aren't inherently based towards STEM, but maybe have enough concepts that you're like, this is actually a fun game, and I can also apply it. I can help apply it to enhancing the lesson or the lessons.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of go-tos that I use depending on which class I'm teaching at the time. If I'm doing like a general, so for instance, at the beginning of the year in my biology class, we do a lot of experimental design.
Okay.
And they're so used to being told like to follow labs like a recipe. Like, here's the lab, here's the answer you're supposed to get. Like, do this. Like, it's still like that.
Right.
And I have to retrain their brain. And so, because I'm like, no, there is no wrong or right answer. It is what it is. I don't care what you get. You just have to analyze it correctly. And so, and I try and get them to come up with their own questions. I don't really like to give them, I have to sometimes, because like
Sure.
guided inquiry you have to do. But like, I'm always like, come up with your own question. And they really like, it stumps them. Like, they have such a hard time doing that. So there's this really simple little game I found called Brain Spin. I love it. I'm not even sure where I found it now. It's a card game. And you basically, it has these like geometric pictures, just like black and white.
Okay.
And you put the cards, like a stack of 6 cards per group, and then you put them in a pile, and you turn over the first one, and everyone has like 30 seconds to write down what they think that picture reminds them of, like a hamburger or a
Sure.
or whatever it is. And like you just brainstorm and you try to have unique answers. So there's 30 seconds of the picture, and then you rotate it 90 degrees, and then you have to come up with some more. And so it's like a minute of just like brainstorming creative ideas for this thing. And then you stop, everyone compares, and you get points for unique answers. And like you go through the stack and see who gets the most points at the end. And I love using that before we do our own experimental design, because it really like triggers their brain. Like, they become way more creative. So like, it's games like that just kind of rewire your creativity that I love. And but there's also like really specific ones that I use that are like, I did not make these, but like my absolute favorite game for my anatomy class is called Organ Attack. I think it's pure genius. And like, I've gotten so many teenagers addicted to this game. So it's made by the online comic, The Awkward Yeti.
Okay.
Super cute comic strip with all these organs. And basically you just like, you distribute all the organs out. There's like 20 organs, and then you deal them all out. And then there's all these attack cards. And each player, we try to attack other players with certain diseases, and you try and kill them off.
Okay.
And it's done, like, it sounds really morbid, but it's done in such a cute way. And all the vocabulary is like spot on. Like, it's an extensive attack card deck. And it's just brilliant. It really, like, they learn so much, and they learn about like necrosis and metastasis and like all these things that they just had no idea what they were before, and which organs are in which system, and what all these, like, what is cirrhosis of the liver, what does that even do to you? And it's just genius, and it's also just really fun to play. So that's one, like, I kind of wish I had designed that, because it has the spirit of what I'm trying to achieve, where it's just a really fun game. But
that's
yet,
awesome.
like, it goes really deep into the learning without you really even doing it. I have kids come in during like lunch or break or after school, like begging to play. And
that's awesome.
These are not gamer kids. Like, these are like, they usually kind of like, I don't want to play card games, but like, they're addicted to it. And every year that happens. And
that's good. I mean, that's really great. I feel like I played a few games with my students towards the end of the year. I tried to do games that we could like play at a little bit of a distance.
Mm-hmm.
A few students just liked some of the card. We played No Thanks,
Mm-hmm.
which didn't connect. I mean, we were at the end of the school year, and I was like, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not teaching you anymore. You're seniors. None of you want me to throw another project your way.
Yeah.
And it's June, so let's enjoy ourselves.
Yes.
And we did No Thanks, and one student loved Red 7. We just kept playing it. He asked for it. He's like, "Can we play Red 7?"
Aww.
He loved that, like, and as they really loved the way in which the game challenged them to think about their hand. Mm-hmm. Okay, I have all these cards. And they started in the beginning, the kids kind of got rolled by me. And I was trying. I mean, Red 7's even a game that even I am not great at. And I've played plenty of games, but like they got to the point where they could plan out and then sort of weed out to where they're suddenly oh, I've just locked out all the rules. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
So it was great. So it was super fun. They also loved speaking of drawing games, Telestrations.
Oh yes, that's a good one to play in the classroom.
We played with no points. We didn't do any of I don't even know what the point scoring is.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, I couldn't even tell you what point scoring was in the game. But they loved it the way that the cards would veer left, quite left in some respects.
Yes.
So somebody did Lion Tamer, and the book came to me, and it said, I think it said, "Man yelling at a cat with a sausage." So I went, all right. So I drew that, and then the next person wrote that basically, and then the next person drew that, and they got to and the girl whose word it started out as, she's like, so my word was Lion Tamer, and she stopped and was cracking up when it got to man yelling at cat with a sausage. And she looked and she looked at me and she's like, "Did you do this one?" She's like, "This is awesome." Because I did. I made it look like a sausage and a man holding a sausage yelling at a cat.
Yeah.
Because I was like, that's what you wrote. I don't know what else am I going to write?
Yeah.
I feel like games like that are so good for, especially because you are a neuroscientist.
Mm-hmm.
They're good for memory. There's a great one called Monstrosity, which to be fair, I've never played, but I have interviewed the designer. But so the game would work well if you're doing a forensic unit. So the way it would work is you get these cards and they have these wacky monsters on them. They're monsters that maybe are inspired by other monsters, but they're all sort of unique and they're all kind of weird. Mm-hmm. And the person is a witness to a crime, and the person has to talk to the sketch artists and describe it, and the person gets 20 seconds to memorize the card, and then is never allowed to pick the card up again, and then has 2 minutes to describe the monster and can be asked questions. The sketch artist can be like, so when you said it had talons, is that 3 talons, 4? How many? Could stop and ask questions.
Ooh, that sounds fun. And it actually would be really good to teach about writing scientific method, writing procedures,
Mm-hmm.
write a good procedure, a good instruction.
Sure. Yeah. And I was just thinking it could be something good too for explaining I guess the limit, maybe if you're doing a forensic thing, the limitations of eyewitnesses and things of that nature,
exactly.
Because you could look and be like, okay, how, because at the end you compare the artist and who was the closest to the picture. And so something you're like, wow, I totally forgot that it had a plume of feathers on its head. How did I forget that?
Yeah, definitely memory and eyewitness testimony and who remembers what. That would be fascinating. And
so it's super interesting the way that you can apply.
Yeah,
I didn't actually play that one yet, but I don't teach forensics. But
yeah, I've been trying. I played just one at the end of the school year.
Nice.
With my AP research class. I'm gonna try and use that and adapt it to my biology class or even anatomy class. Well, the terms, just redo, make my own cards, or they can even make their own cards with terms of and you have to kind of guess together what the clue might be, and that'd be fun. And so I've used one year I used Pandemic Iberia. I don't know if you've played that one, but it's a historical disease, so you can't actually cure anything. You have to do research on it to kind of quote unquote cure it and win the game. So I had, towards the end of the year, one year, I had my anatomy class play, and then instead of researching it, they actually had to go research it and then present to me on yellow fever. And if they had accurately figured out what yellow fever was and who it affected and all this stuff, then I would let them, get that particular tip. So
that's awesome.
It's fun. And but general ones, I mean, there's all kinds of general ones you can do, like word games and vocabulary and
Sure.
things. But
Absolutely.
there's also like timeline. They have a whole series of different
Mm-hmm.
topics, or like top trumps. They have different topics for different, like all subjects.
You might be able to redo the words in code names too.
Yes,
Like a code name STEM, like a code names focused on like biology or things like that, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because and then the kids are. What's interesting with code names, because we did that remotely. That was the only game that I could do really remotely with the students, because there's like a website and the kids can all kind of like not log in, but yeah, kind of log into the website.
Oh.
Yeah, I think it's if you just Google code names online. I don't know what the URL is, but it's basically that, and the kids can all log in, and then whoever the clue givers are can see the whole board, and everybody else just sees on their computer screen. They just see like the cards, like the way you would look on a table.
That's neat.
And it's what's also interesting. What the students took them a little while to get was a lot of times in the beginning they would just say like Igloo 1, as you're like, okay, Eskimo, and they would say like they would say like cat 1, and so sometimes you're like you want to draw like usually there was enough like the time you're going to lose, you got to start making deeper connections, you got to start making more creative connections between these cards.
Gotcha.
So it took a little while, and it took a little while to get them to talk to each other.
Yeah, that's the thing.
And not just click.
Yeah.
No, it's obviously Barracuda. What happened? Did we not win? Yeah, it's not Barracuda. Maybe you should talk to your teammates first.
Yeah, it's hard to get them to talk to each other, especially online. It's just like such a struggle. We did like a Pictionary with my anatomy class. Like I actually did the virtual kids versus the in-person kids because we were like hybrid at one point.
Okay.
We used like Google Jamboard. So
oh, nice.
It was kind of fun. I mean, it was a little bit laggy because of the connection, but it was kind of fun, and we could all play together that way.
Nice. And they were just doing anatomy pieces of the anatomy, like
So I'd give them a word secretly, and then they'd have to try and get their teammates to guess it, and if they didn't, the other ones could steal it.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
We had some pretty funny ones. But
going back to the game the concepts, what are your favorite science concepts to gamify? Like, what are the science concepts that you get so excited to teach and then go, how am I going to gamify this possibly?
Well, so my specialty is neuroscience, and ironically, I have one very simple like wallet kind of card game that's neuroscience based.
I saw that Neuro Hero.
Yeah, I think it's because, like I said, my teaching drives the games that we make, and I don't like. There's a unit on the nervous system and anatomy, but other than that, I don't get to spend a whole lot of time on it. I love teaching any kind of biology concept.
Okay.
I just like I have cycles and crazy cats that I co-designed, but there's also like I have a game called Crab Crossing where it's all about like this habitat with different like ecological relationships, but really it's just the crabs, like it's based on Christmas Island near Australia, where all these millions of crabs try and cross over to the other side of the island without getting like squashed by cars. So
interesting.
I mean, but it has different characters in the game that's like kind of, like symbiotic relationships and all this stuff. But that's just really fun to me. And then I have another one that I designed, which is not on the website, but it's called Exotic Zoo. And basically it's like the top 10 world's most deadliest animals, and they're fighting each other, and there's different powers based on where their habitat is and things like that. And I just love the biology part. Starsmith is actually a chemistry game because I teach chemistry sometimes.
Okay.
And that came out of the fact that I just wanted them to understand. Well, so like when stars are first born, they're hydrogen, the very first, smallest element. And then as they heat up, they fuse, and then they form helium atoms, which is like number 2 on the periodic table. And then as those heat up, they fuse and form number 3, which is lithium, and they get like bigger and bigger atoms. And so you can age a star based on like how far down the periodic table it has gone. And so I use that kind of concept to teach them properties of the periodic table with Starsmith. So
Oh, cool.
yeah, so it's like it's not like here is chemistry. It's very subtle. It's like here's a star and we're gonna build these stars and they're gonna start off as hydrogen and they're gonna fuse and do this, and like there's a lot of chemistry and like element numbers and names and things like that, but it's not like this is a chemistry game. But yeah, anything with biology I love. John actually created this amazing game. It's an engineering party game. That's the one that Hasbro wanted for a long time and then ended up not doing it. But
okay.
So he was a civil engineer, and it's all about materials testing. So you have these cards with properties on them, and they're secrets. Everyone has like their secret property cards, and it could be like magnetic or stretchy or bouncy or something like that. And then there's objects that you draft from the box that you pick because you think they're going to match your properties. And like there's different rounds of drafting, and then there's actually a kit in the box where you test it to see who was right. And so you get to like drop things and slide things and stretch things, and it's a lot of fun and silly and laughing and things like that. But it is like it's all based on engineering concepts from civil engineering, and so that's very different from all our other games as well. So
that is cool. Did you submit Crab Crossing to like either the Boston Fig or the Cardboard Edison Award?
It was Cardboard Edison. Yeah.
I was one of the people that left feedback on Crab
You
Crossing.
did? I'll have to go back.
Because you described it, and I went, and you said it was just about Crab's Crossing. I was like, wait a minute. I was like, I legitimately remember. I remember leaving feedback about a game about crabs crossing an island, and then I just looked it up, and it's on some website called People of Play.
Oh yes, it is on there. You're right.
And I just was like, wait a minute. I know that I have actually seen this. I was like, I know I left comment. I was one of I don't know how many people commented on it, but I was one of the people that left feedback. I don't know if my feedback was positive or negative, but I left feedback apparently on it.
No, yeah, I had a lot of people comment on that one, so I'm gonna go back and see what you said. But yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that one of the companies is looking at it right now.
That's awesome. That's super cool. I think that's awesome the way that you are bringing games into the classroom.
Thank you.
Because I really enjoyed playing games with the students because they were a little, and not every student played. Some students didn't play, and that's what I said. Whatever, if you like, I had a couple of students who just wanted to sit there on their phones, and I was like, okay, I was like, fine, whatever you want. I'm not going to shame you for not playing a game. If you don't want to play, you don't have to play. I'll offer it to you, and they and had some other students who they were like, what are we going to do today? I was like, play a game. I was like, it's probably more fun than you sitting on your phones for 45 minutes. Because we were just like,
yeah.
Because it's also like it's seniors, it's June. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
We're not bringing that October energy into June.
No, but they'll see other people playing the game and have fun. Like, hey, I want to play that.
And they did. A lot of them did. A lot of them ended up, having fun. Yeah. It was just super fun to play something.
Yeah, and what's funny with games in the classroom? So I'm a huge advocate, as are you. And what I find really strange is that a lot of teachers are opposed to it or like reluctant to do it, I should say, because they're kind of old school, at least in my school. But I've encountered a lot that like think games are chaotic. And there's like it's just too much disorganization, and they're just all fun, and there's no learning, and it's really shocking to me. Like I'm kind of on this mission of being like, no, like games are actually better for classroom management because the kids are more engaged. And
Yes.
even though it looks chaotic, it's really not. Like they're just having fun. And if they're doing worksheets or bored, that's when the mischief starts because they're bored.
Yes. Because and
Um,
they don't want to do the
yeah.
worksheet.
Yes.
Like, yeah, no, there's I think some of my own colleagues might have looked at me the same way. A
Yeah.
few of them were. I think a few people were also trying to like. It was like we ended June 25th, and I think some of them, it was like June 21st. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to get through this material with these kids, and they just
Yeah.
don't want to. I'm like, yo, it's June 25th. It's June 20 something.
It's not going to happen. Yeah.
Let's just have fun with the kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, they like watching movies, but they also like movies. Movies are fun. I'm a film teacher as well, so movies are fun. But
Hmm.
like my film class is super duper hands on. I'm like,
Yeah.
get up and go make a movie. Like that's like,
Yes.
we could talk about movie theory and product and various production rules and things like the rule of thirds and the 180-degree rule and the 30-degree rule and all that sort of stuff. But like, just go out and make a movie. Like,
Yeah.
you got to do stuff. So,
Exactly.
and just watching them, just sitting and watching movies at the end of the year, sometimes, a bunch of kids just zone out.
Oh, yeah. It's not active. It's, more like a passive kind of thing. And yeah. And
Games are still active.
I know. And I think teachers are also scared in the beginning of the year that it's going to waste time to play games. Like they just want to drill facts into their heads instead. And like that's not really learning, right? That's memorizing or cramming for a test, but it's not internalizing the concepts the way
No.
you can with a game. So
I think there's a lot too there's such a focus on the tests.
yes.
And this year, especially, even the Biden administration was like, no, we're not going to let you say no to doing a test this year. You have to, you have to do the test. And then New York City, at least, was like, or New York State, I think, was like, we'll make the regions opt in instead of opt out.
Yeah.
And like, I think we had 70 kids take the regions. That was it, like 70 students
Wow.
out of like a school of, I think there's normally about 700 in the high school and about 550 in the lower grades, the grades that
Wow.
typically are taking the regions, whereas a lot of seniors aren't.
Yeah.
I think that's going to scare the test makers
Yeah.
because all of a sudden they're going to go, wait, because schools and teachers are like, what if we just didn't do this test shit?
Yeah. But if we just did project-based learning, how about that?
What if we let kids learn things and learn facts instead of grilling them for some, which effectively is its own game.
It is. It's
A
just all
test.
about yes.
I tell the kids that I'm like, for every kid that tells me they're a bad test taker, I'm like, nope, you just have to get better at playing a game. It's a game. It's three of these things belong together. This question is asking you something, which is the obviously wrong answer. Like, cross out the answers that are wrong. Like, sometimes it's testing your knowledge, and sometimes it's testing your ability to figure shit out.
Yeah, like a multiple choice test is the least effective way of testing knowledge. Honestly.
My brother and I were playing a trivia game. I'm very good at trivia games, but my brother and I, because I can store a lot of random knowledge, although I can't remember a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But my brother and I were playing a trivia game. It's not a very good trivia game. It's called Battle of the Sexes. You might have heard of it. I don't know.
I've seen that. Yeah.
It's like very stupid, very like, it's very like gender. It's like they make it like only men would know these questions. Only women would know these questions. You're like, okay, whatever. And so like the question asked, I was playing with my cousins, and the question asked was something about a battle. Some battle, like something on some naval battle in a war, maybe Vietnam or something. It was like, which one of these is the naval battle? And it was asked to my female cousins, and then they were like, and I think there's a mechanic in it where you're like, send it back if you don't think the boys know it, right?
Yeah.
And so they did, and my cousin's boyfriend at the time looked at me and my brother, and was like, "Go ahead, geniuses, since you two are so good at trivia games." And my brother and I, who had no concept of what the answer was, we very systematically looked through the cards and we looked through the answers, and we just started we looked at the wording and went, okay, what do we know about that? That seems like an island. That seems like we were breaking down the answer and being like, this could be, and then we debated and we were like, is it? I think it's C. C sounds like an ocean battle in some respect.
Oh
And
my
it was like it was like 5 or 6 minutes of us, the two of us, breaking this thing down, and then we're like, is it C? And my cousins all looked at me and was like, are you kidding me? You guys got that? And I looked at it, I was like, my brother and I were like, we had no idea what the real answer. We didn't know the answer, but we knew that we could figure it out because we knew a multiple choice was a game.
Yeah, you gamified the answer choices.
I feel like that's something that to help students too, right? To like get them to understand that these tests are just games.
I know, and it's heartbreaking because there are so many students I've had that are just so smart, and I know that they know the stuff. Like I've been with them all semester. I know they know their stuff. And then they just can't pass that standardized test because they're just not test takers. And then they come back like, I'm so stupid. I'm like, no, you're not.
You're like, you're not stupid.
That's the
it's
worst.
A trick.
Thing. Yeah.
It's a trick.
I know.
Well, Catherine, that's my last question. I don't know, whatever. What are the cool things that Cat Lily Games is going to be doing in the future that you're excited about? Especially because we have a school year coming up. I don't know when yours starts. Mine starts in September. I don't know if Virginia starts at a different time.
Yeah. So our first day of school is August 11th.
Okay. So I assume your last day is in May or early June?
Yeah, it was June 4th. So yeah. So we're like slightly off with our schedules. But so the first big thing that's happening is I don't know if you heard about like the Generation Analog. It's a 2-day virtual conference which was supposed to be part of Gen Con, but since Gen Con got moved in person in September, they're keeping it virtual. So it's sponsored by Asmodee. Co-hosted. So Asmodee has a whole research wing now called Game Lab. And so they're researching the impact of board games on society.
Okay.
And so they're the ones that are like the primary hosts, but it's also co-hosted by this journal called Analog Game Studies. And Gen Con is the sponsor. So it's like, I'm really excited. It has these keynote speakers. Elizabeth Hargrave and Scott Nicholson are among. I think there's another person too, but
looks like Dave Walters.
Yeah, and so I'm on panel number 1, and I'm really excited to be part of it. It's like the first Generation Analog conference and all these big name people, so that's a real thrill for me. And then we are actually going to launch a Kickstarter later this fall. Because all we do is like print on demand right now. And I really want to like actually start, mass producing games if I can, because I'm having such, like I told you, like I get all these like verbal yeses and then they kind of peter out. So I'm like, well, I really want to have like a mass run of one of my games. So I'm going to try Cycles because that was our first game and it won the gold medal at Serious Play. So I'm hoping to launch that later this fall, so I can send you details on that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then, that's our 2 big things coming up this fall. And other than that, we're just, play testing games and having fun at our weekly meetings.
That's awesome. The Generation Analog sounds super cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really great conversation. Like all the panels are just amazing about like inclusivity and storytelling and like board games in the classroom. It sounds really good.
It's interesting the number looking at the list. It's interesting the number of people I've had on my show that I can see. That I'm like, oh, I know that I've had that person. Like Tanya Pobita has been on my show. Elizabeth Hargrave has. Scott Nicholson was on a long time ago. Shelley Jones was on. Greg Loring Albright was on.
Nice.
Yourself now.
Stamp of approval.
There you go. Yeah. The who, what, why stamp of approval. There's
That's
no
great.
stamp. There's no stamp, though. There's no actual stamp. Well, that is super cool, Catherine. Thank you so much for coming on and talking about games and teaching. As you can tell, I love teaching, so I could talk about it.
Yeah, no, this has been a really great conversation. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. Well, you have a wonderful night.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Mike.
If you like the show, consider giving it a rating on iTunes. It helps with the algorithm and all that. Ciao.
Thank you for checking out a United Geeks Network family member. If you enjoyed it and are looking for other online media with a geek culture slant, head over to UnitedGeeksNetwork.com, where you will find Rolling Dice and Taking Names, a podcast by guys who have a passion for tabletop games and happen to have mics. They discuss all forms of tabletop gaming, from board games to miniatures to RPGs. The United Geeks Network. You can broadcast your geekiness at UnitedGeeksNetwork.com.